To address the legal concerns of our community, AM 1310 The Light presents Legally Speaking. Here is today's host.
Good morning. Good morning. I'd like to say thank you to our Facebook listeners, our YouTube. Don't forget that this show is also being recorded live on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, we're on 3 different radio stations now. 1310 and 96.7 and a third channel. But in any event, just make sure you join us each week. Now, today we have superstar attorney join us, Milton Grimes, who started the evolution and litigation of police misconduct with the Rodney King case. And we're happy to have Milton. And also we have the superstar lawyer, Vanita Banks. She is a cybersecurity expert, master's in tax, brilliant research analyst, and we're just so happy to have them on the show today. Good morning. How are you doing today, ladies and gentlemen?
Good morning, Mr. Lee.
Good morning, Attorney Lee.
Well,
we're excited to be back after a little break the last couple of weeks.
Attorney Banks, this news, the massacre in Oklahoma, the president visited that, and for the first time in American history, a president visited and made light of this severe institutional crisis that has never been corrected in American history. This was just as bad as the incident of slavery in terms of what they did to those folks. Just a massacre. Can you give us a report on that? What's your thought process on the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre?
Well, first, let me say that it was so powerful to see a few weeks ago Viola Fletcher, Mother Fletcher, 107 years old, and her sibling testifying before Congress, accompanied by National Bar Association member and civil rights lawyer Demario Solomon Simmons. It was just so powerful to see her advocating for justice within their lifetime. They are 3 of the few remaining descendants who were alive during the 1921 massacre that are seeking accountability and restorative justice for 100 years of continued harm to the descendants of the massacre in 1921. As you know, the Greenwood District was at that time the nation's greatest model of Black prosperity, known as Black Wall Street. And in 18 hours, over 40 square blocks of residential and prosperous business community was destroyed and burned to the ground, resulting in the murder of 300 Black Tulsans and the displacement of over 10,000 Black residents. And to date, there have been no arrests, no convictions, and no reparations. And so, as Attorney Grimes and Lee may be well aware, in 2003, the great and brilliant Professor Charles Ogletree and Willie Gary and other members of the National Bar Association filed a lawsuit seeking justice for the descendants of the massacre. And that case was dismissed in 2004 on grounds that the statute of limitations has run.
Well, one historical background, so the listeners who may not be aware of this severe American history tragedy, this whole process started back in May 31st and June the 1st, 1921. The reason it's such a historical matter now because it's 100 years later and nothing has been done in order to correct the grave injustice to these African Americans who were slaughtered their property taken, their lives taken, their lives ruined, and it's never been corrected. And this incident also introduced bombing of American citizens. The white mob vigilantes got aircraft and dropped bombs on their house with these gas bombs. And I watched part of this at the congressional hearing. It was just devastating as to what happened. And the net result is that there's been a lot of talk, but no action. What's your thought process, Attorney Grimes?
I've been working on helping bring this to light for a little over a year now. As a matter of fact, our trial lawyer college prepared to make a presentation there to lawyers who represent indigent people in Tulsa this year, but we had to do it virtual, but we still did it in recognition of the horror that went on there. You know, when you talk about it, it sort of sanitizes the severity and the cruelness and the devastation and the inhumanity that went on there. A friend of mine that I work with on my board sent me this book, The Groundbreaking, An American City and Its Search. And I had just finished reading the book by Ty Sedal last weekend, and she sent me this book during the week. It's written by Scott Ellsworth. And I just started flipping the pages, flipping through it, and I turned to page 23, Nate, and I like to read just part of page 23 to you. It starts with George H. Miller, a white doctor who was working late in his office in the nearby Unity building at 4th and Main, hears the sharp staccato of gunfire and rushes out into the street, where he comes upon a wounded black man surrounded by a crowd of whites. He tries to reach the man, but cannot. Quote, the crowd was getting more and more belligerent. Dr. Miller will later recall, quote, the Negro had been shot so many times in the chest, and men from the onlookers were slashing him with knives. The police do nothing to stop it. Instead, officers start handing out, quote, special deputy badges and ribbons to members of the lynch mob. Nor is that all. Breaking into Dick Barden's sporting goods store and some nearby pawn shops, white Tulsa policemen began doling out rifles, pistols, shotguns, and boxes of ammunition to members of the lynch mob who gathered at the courthouse. Laurel H. Buck, a white bricklayer who was sworn in as a special deputy, will later state that a police officer told him to, quote, get a gun and get a N-word. That was the atmosphere that was created over a mistake because of a brother coming off of an elevator and tripping on the unsettled elevator and reaching out and touching a white woman on her arm, whom he had known for 3 years, who they knew each other. There was no rape. She screamed, and the brother got scared and ran off. And the white man said, he raped her. He raped her. There was no rape. And that's what started this death march. So it's been covered up. It's been like a code of silence by the powers to be in Tulsa, police, mayors, councilmen. They didn't talk about it for years. It's been buried. But it's supported by the mentality that I read about in this man's book, Me and Robert E. Lee and Me by Ty Sedal. He is a brigadier general from West Point, and he has told it, he's given it out, that Robert E. Lee is like, he is worshiped in the South. He's like a religion in the South. At the school, William and Mary, where he went to school, this general, they have a shrine to Robert E. Lee. And he said the students pass by the church and go pray at the altar of Robert E. Lee for passing grades and success in life. They treat Robert E. Lee like he's a god. And that religion is throughout the South today, and it's throughout this country today. And he talks about the difficulty at West Point in recognizing that the Confederate officers who went to West Point were traitors. They were traitors. They committed treason, and how America has honored them, and how we honor the lifestyle of the South, how it's a culture there. They didn't fight for slavery. They fought to preserve a lifestyle. You see what I'm saying? And so the North was wrong, and they have controlled the narrative of that so that whites can accept the killing and slaughter of Black people as part of what they should do to maintain their white supremacy. And so when I think about this subject and this thing that they've done, I get angry, Nate. I get angry, and I'm controlling myself even now talking about it just to y'all on this radio program, not to start shouting like Lee Terrell. You know, I want to just shout that this shit has got to stop, you know, and it's been going on for years. And the South still worship the Confederacy. This man talks about in this book how every time there's a civil rights advancement, you will see or hear of another statue, parade, or tribute to something about the Confederacy. That's kind of like the white language, speaking of we still in control. And that's just how they do business, y'all. So if we don't stop it now and put it on the table, it will be our future too. So we got to do something.
And that's why it was so powerful for President Biden to visit Tulsa, and his remarks were powerful as well. Just because we haven't been talking about it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And it does require that we tell the truth, that we account for this massacre. And what's so interesting is that many Tulsa residents, you know, at some point were not even aware of this massacre right there, you know, in Tulsa, you know. And as Black Americans migrated from the South, what's interesting is one of the places that they settled was in Oklahoma, right? And I've not done a lot of research about it, but we remember the Trail of Tears, and you know, a lot of this land was, well, of course, the U.S. was originally occupied, you know, by our indigenous citizens.
Oh, did we lose Attorney Banks? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you momentarily. Go ahead.
Oh, that was the only point that I was making. And with respect to another aspect of this is that it was discovered that there were many Black Tulsans that were buried in mass graves. And last fall, as a result of excavation at one of the cemeteries, nearly a dozen coffins have been uncovered in unmarked mass graves. Mm-hmm. And it's anticipated that even more are located in that same cemetery. So archaeologists and forensic scientists are, as we speak, attempting to identify those Tulsans. Again, part of the hell that was imposed during that 18 hours of just sheer terror imposed on a community of people. And let me just stop there.
Well, one thing I need to expound upon, something that Attorney Grimes mentioned. Uh, Dick Rowland was the young black man who was the center of this controversy. He was a shoeshine kid, 19-year-old at the time. He went into the building, he used the bathroom, and when he was walking out the elevator, he tripped and fell on an uneven surface. And as he was falling, he grabbed the arm of a white teenage 17-year-old Sarah Page. And when he grabbed her arm, although they were both in public purview, in the public, a clerk yelled, "Assault or rape." So the whole incident was magnified and created only because this was a young black man. And when they yelled rape, he panicked and he started running. And so, no, the charges weren't filed because the clerk refused to prosecute the young man. So this whole thing was a fraudulent concoction that led to, it appears though, when you look at the historical overlay of this, is that they intentionally destroyed this community, not just because of that rape, but they had some subsequent thing, but because it seemed like they just wanted to do it. It was just an evil type transgression committed by people who were deputized by the sheriff. It was just incredible failure in American democracy.
It was
This
too
was,
it was a failure of the black folks to stay in their place and be subservient and poor and needy of the white race. They had developed an independent situation there in the black community. They didn't have to, they had grocery stores, drug stores, doctors, lawyers. They had everything they need in this community. They didn't need to go out. And I'm sure this just tore up white folks around them, because part of the Confederacy mentality and the understanding and belief was, we have to be subservient to them as long as we exist here, because we exist here for the service of them. And so it defied that understanding and that rule. And that's why that anger festered out with that incident, because they wanted a reason to tear it down. This was not to be. It's obvious.
Absolutely, absolutely, Attorney Grimes. You know, this massacre was fueled by white, jealousy.
Jealousy.
As they, watched and observed the nation's greatest model of black independent prosperity at that time. We talk about black empowerment. This was the model for black empowerment. As you said, there were banks, restaurants, libraries, hotels, grocery stores.
Yeah, it was an incredible failure in our democracy.
Absolutely. And it's been covered up for too long. There have been, go ahead, Attorney Grimes, please.
This story I'm trying to tell you about in Robert E. Lee and Me by this guy, Seedall. It just, I'm reading and I'm thinking and I'm remembering when I was in Virginia back in the 60s in high school, and how they closed the high schools down rather than integrate and rather than to keep segregation. Black kids weren't taught for 5 years in part of Virginia. White kids were taught with taxpayers' money because they built private schools for them. How the presidencies, how John Kennedy wouldn't go to a civil rights celebration because he didn't want to anger Southern white folks. How all of these presidents we've had, and look how they spoke about the need to keep blacks in their place and to keep them subservient. This thing is really deep in the core of white folks, how they look at us as not equal, to be not entitled to the richness and the benefits of this country. We are here to be enslaved. We are enslaved to them. And this is a belief that's real deep.
As a terrible tragedy in American history. The other issue about this, though, is that the president visits Tulsa a speech is given. So what is the next step? I missed the part. What are they planning to do about this? Does anybody follow up and know exactly what are their intention to fix what is an obvious miscarriage of justice in American history? I mean, with the Native American who they murdered, they took their land, their property, and things like that. We know, I remember being part of a board, there was a reparation of $6 billion given to Native American, as part of a
Crowley LLP is a law firm located in downtown Indianapolis. The law firm focuses on personal injury claims, medical mistakes, wrongful death, Social Security.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, we know that we've had situations where they paid reparation, and in this case here, there were two survivors left. The 107-year-old lady who testified. She was just very elegant. I was just really thankful to hear her story. At least I saw part of it. So, but what are they planning to do about this?
I don't know what they're planning to do, but they can't let this be kept quiet and swept under the rug. This should be a required study of every elementary school, high school, college. People need to know about this. We can't not let them bury our history ever again. That's why George Floyd's situation, bringing this out, we have a duty to keep it going, folks, and not let them go back to covering our pain up. That's what, now, you asked me specifically, what should we do? We need to discuss and settle and make reparations to the descendants of the people who were there in Tulsa, who lived there. They got DNA that they're performing on the bodies they're recovering. They could discover and find some of the people. America needs to pay for what they've done.
Well,
I agree, and Greenwood is now just 2 blocks. The African American Greenwood Business District is now only 2 blocks, and it was 40 square blocks. And I think now there might be 26 businesses where there were hundreds of businesses back in 1921. And I agree wholeheartedly with Attorney Grimes that there should be, reparations paid to the descendants of the massacre to make them whole, and that those dollars can be calculated and traced back. And then what compounded the injury was that, after, again, kept silent for so many years, then you had urban renewal come in, and you had the building of a massive, highway. Then you have regentrification that comes in, and white people are able to buy the land, right, at bargain prices, originally owned by the Black people, of the Greenwood district. So that all has to be repaired. And restorative justice means making the descendants whole and addressing the huge wealth gap that currently exists through making affordable housing available, equal access to education and health care and housing, assistance to the small businesses and entrepreneurs in Tulsa, and enabling them to obtain the access to capital that they need to grow their businesses, and having the Black descendants of Tulsa intricately engaged in all discussions relative to rebuilding Greenwood District and restoring what was so brutally taken from the descendants' ancestors in 1921.
Okay, now to my celebrity guest, man, we have a bunch of callers and a bunch of questions. So there's 2 things that I need you to address. Pierre says, what are we doing for blacks today? Working class blacks today are being replaced by immigrants. Blacks are being pushed out of LA and Southern California because of high rents. Southern states still owe. And a second person, contrary to that, says blacks, too many people do not want to go back to work because they're getting the federal stimulus money. Wow, that's a mouthful. You live in LA, is that accurate, Milton?
I heard that there's a problem finding people to build up the workforce that's needed right now with the coming out of our society again. I don't know all of the economic principles that would apply to dealing with these problems, but I understand that employers are having a problem finding workers, especially in the restaurant industry where they're feeling it the most, because now they got customers coming in, but they don't have enough people to help serve these restaurant customers. So what do? I guess we just have to keep advertising that jobs are available, and people make applications for them. I don't know how you change this problem.
Well, I tell you what, we got a bunch of callers. Our phone are lit up, so let's go to some of the callers. Everybody want to comment on this. Okay, first caller, you have a question or comment for us today? Hello, producer. Hello.
I can say.
Okay. Hey, caller, you have a question or comment for us today?
Yes. Good morning to you and your guest. You laid out some facts, and I'm just not understanding or comprehending from the facts. You stated that, and I believe the fact, the survivors lived through the massacre. You said that it was a young black guy that was almost tripped in the elevator, and he grabbed the white girl unintentionally and tried to break his fall. That's what it sounds like to me. In addition to that, the prosecutor would not prosecute. So I don't understand why the white man's name was left out of history, who lied and said he tried to rape her. I don't understand why his name was left out. In addition to that, I don't understand why no white man's name is placed in the history book or from the list of either the survivors who murdered the African American people, especially the children. I don't understand why that was left out, but I do understand that a white man can tell a lie, and that lie can live. And people that look like you and I will take that lie and continue to fester that lie and allow that lie to grow. Donald Trump is one of those pathological liars. Stolen is a word that he continues to use. Now people that look like you and I are using the same word, stolen. Nothing was stolen from him. He is the thief, to be honest. And I'd just like for you guys to comment on this part. If there was the Black Wall Street, why wasn't, not the word reparation, why wasn't they given what was lost if the prosecutor knew that it was a lie and their homes and everything? Why wasn't there restitution? And I'll take your answer off the air. Thank you so much.
Nate, if I may, I keep referring to the book, Me and Robert E. Lee, where this man talks about just what this lady, with what I could hear, is talking about. Because, ma'am, throughout history, it is seen that the white community will feed off of a lie without questioning the accuracy of it, but it just gives them the fuel to do another act that will keep Black folks in line. They don't care about the reasonableness of it or the accuracy of it. It is just they take that and use it to demonstrate their superiority and make you feel inferior to them. So your quest for why won't they tell the truth, or why don't they do this, is not to them. And when I say them, I'm talking about the white society. Throughout history, it hasn't been their concern to find the truth. It's just like Donald Trump told a lie, and he tells a lie about anything he wants to lie about, but there's a certain percentage of this society who will take that and go with it. Mitch Conley and all the rest of them, if you listen to them, some of them, January 6th did not exist. And we all saw it. We all saw it. But the lie says, no, your eyes are lying to you. Now, that didn't exist. If that didn't exist, if they said enough time, enough people will believe, no, that's a lie. So that's my analysis of that.
Well, we got a bunch of callers. Let's take a couple callers real quickly because our lines are lit up. Okay, the next caller, you have a comment.
Hello.
Hello. What's your comment today, caller?
This is Guy. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Guy. Thank you very much for calling in the show today.
Yeah, great show. Very, very busy Saturday morning. There's another book your listeners might want to check out. It's called How the Word, W-O-R-D, is Passed by Clint Smith, which also deals with some of these topics that you're discussing today. But I also wanted to say that it's a constant battle in this country. We have freedom of speech, and it's very important to take advantage of that freedom. You know, you mentioned the false narratives that get out there and are continually passed along by people to their advantage. So it's very important to know the facts and to keep repeating the facts. They say a lie will be halfway around the world before the truth ties its shoes, and that's very true. Right. Also, wanted to say that Attorney Banks, I think you're doing a great job in terms of information, and I think it's very important to continually emphasize the fact of how this massacre started with the incident in the elevator and the fact that the young man and the young lady involved knew each other. And I think it's very important to keep saying. Also, shameless plug, Dr. Banks, Sharpridge Alumni annual meeting is going on right now, and it can be link can be picked up at sharpridgealumni.com if after you get off the air.
Thank you so much. It's so great to hear your voice on the call today.
We just got invited to an alumni event, sound like, but it didn't give you the address.
I've got the link.
Okay.
They're holding their alumni, my high school alumni meeting is taking place as we speak. But, you know, we've seen this so often throughout our history. 1955, when Emmett Till was murdered for allegedly whistling at a white woman. This is not new. And we know that Black history is American history, but it hasn't been taught that way throughout our history, through our school systems, right? And we even see today that legislation is being introduced across the country to prohibit race, these types of stories, right? This type of history from being taught in our schools, even today, you know. So the effort continues to block this important history from being, you know, taught in our schools.
Well, we got a bunch of folks on the line, and so let me go back to the phone lines again, because there's a big controversy brewing now. I see a lot of people. There's a big debate here that's unrelated to our topic that keep popping up about these unemployment benefits. But go ahead, caller. Let's go to the next caller. We'll deal with that later. Caller, you have a question for us or comment? Will?
I have a question for you, Mr. Lee.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering why is it so important that the black man listening to what the white man thinks about us. The question I have is, what do we think about ourselves? Why are we so interested in what somebody else's opinion is? Have we formed an opinion about who we are? We got to do that first in order to be able to grow and come together in the unity and do the things, make this goal of what we got to accomplish. We shouldn't be thinking about what somebody else is thinking. What do we think about ourselves is the question.
That's a brilliant question, and I agree with you. And here's my answer. I think that we have to uplift each other. We have to be supportive of our families. As men, black men, we have to make sure that our next generation is challenged, but also we must help them to go to a higher height than we've achieved. We have to respect our wives and support our families. We have to help other people in the neighborhood to help prevent the string of violence, crime. There's a lot we need to do to our community to help ourselves. And I agree with you. I think that we have to do more, and we have to work harder and to make sure that our next generation is more successful. I think that's an outstanding question, Mr. William.
Well,
okay.
I think in our situation, sir, in addressing you, I agree with part of what you say, but I think that we would be ignoring a very serious situation if we don't think about what that other man think of us, because is how he's going to treat us. And we need to know what he's thinking, how he's thinking about us, so that we know how to react to that. And also go on. No, I don't know if that's clear, because he's disguised himself pretty well.
I already know what he's thinking.
Okay.
Why would he kill 300 people in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, Florida, run the people out of the
Well, that's easy for you to say because you see that.
Shooting the black man in the back.
All right.
Well, we already know what he think about us.
I guess because I see some black people thinking they don't know what he's thinking. I agree with some of what you say, but I don't think we can ignore him. I don't think we can afford that. That's all I'm saying.
And I agree with what the caller is saying. And I think that throughout history, we've shown that resilience.
Right.
The residents of Tulsa, they quietly attempted to rebuild as best they could. So that's my reaction to the caller.
Oh, well, you got one additional matter, Attorney Banks. They want to know your take. Well, two things. One, Milton, they say that that you should know that blacks are being priced out of LA. I don't know that. One of the person want to know your opinion about LA and blacks being priced out of LA.
It's expensive living in Los Angeles. It always has been expensive living in Los Angeles and California, period, because that's the price of living out here because of the air and the location, etc. I don't deny that. What you're going to do about it, I don't know.
Let me address, affordable housing and, other strategies that the administration is actively addressing at this time through several pieces of legislation, including, first, the American Rescue Act, secondly, the American Jobs Act, and there is another third act. But these are systemic issues, whether it's New York, whether it's California and LA, these Chicago, same issues relative to affordability. But let me address, since there are a lot of callers, the unemployment benefits question. And this is an issue that, again, the Biden administration is aware of, that there are concerns about people collecting, about some citizens, not all, and it's not, we can't say that it's African American citizens, but there may be some citizens that are receiving unemployment benefits and maybe refusing to take jobs And that is a concern that President Biden is aware of, and he recently addressed that in one of his speeches, where he stated that if a citizen is offered, a job, that they should not be entitled to continue to receive unemployment benefits.
Let me just speak a little bit. I think it's difficult for a person to take a job at $15 an hour when they get in unemployment benefits that's probably equal to, if not better than that. So we got to come up to modern day and time of what we need as a pay.
That's an excellent point, Attorney Grimes. I mean, we need a livable wage, right?
I tell you what we're going to do. I want to table this because we got a lot of comments. I think I'm going to invite the person who heads up the unemployment benefits for the state on the show next week, because I got a lot of comments about that, and I can't address these comments. But we do have about 4 callers. Let's go back to the lines real quick because we're running out of time. Okay, let's take one of the callers real quickly. You have a comment for us today. I can't remember who's next.
Good morning, Nate and guests. This is Ron, world's greatest Uber Lyft driver. Nate, earlier in the day, there was a conversation about critical race theory. I would like to ask the question, if someone can help me out, what is the goal of critical race theory? My next question is, if there was a Black Wall Street previously, why isn't there one now, or why aren't there hundreds throughout the Black community in our neighborhoods? I think I'm going to stop with those 2. I had a third, but I'm going to stop there. If you could help me understand critical race theory and its goal, not what it is, its goal, and how come there aren't new examples of Black Wall Streets throughout this country?
Well, when the system is designed not to give you loans and to give you reparations for what they've taken from you and to keep you in a subservient role, that is by design. It's not just by accident or the laziness of our people. It is by the majority's handling of their business to keep us in line. So I don't think it's that hard to understand.
Can you explain to me that wasn't that in place when they did that in Tulsa? I'm sure it was way worse then than it is now.
I'm not so sure about what was worse when and then now. I'm just saying that I recognize, to me, the struggle that African-American people have had to go through to get wherever we've gotten, sir. And that's my answer to your question.
Okay, we got about a half dozen calls. Let me see, can I get a few more callers, because we only got 5 minutes left. Okay, let's go to the next caller real quickly. Hello.
Hello, attorneys. How are y'all doing? This is Brother Ahmad calling. And I just had a couple comments, I guess, to some of the things I've been hearing. I do agree with the caller. We should not necessarily be cared about what others think about us, because others don't really care about what we think about them. They just do what they need to do to succeed and persevere in life. We do need to do more self-reflection and answering the question about why we don't have more Black Wall Streets. I think the key critical point that we failed to realize was during the 1960s, 50s, and 60s, during integration, or that integration period, we did better as a people and as a community when we were segregated from Western ideology and their standards and morals and ways of living and principles, because we had our own set of standards, morals, ways of living, and principles, which lifted up the Black community. There's been people here in Indianapolis, they've become doctors and lawyers, or they were trashmen, or whatever their field of endeavor is. The thing is that we lived in the same communities with each other. And when immigration took place, we decided to take flight from our own people who did not have the same economic standards, because we have a better job, a little bit more money, more cars, or whatever it is that those false narratives and ideas that made us seem to become better or to escape that. I think that what we need to do as a people is still achieve for those fields of endeavor, but come back to our community so we can show those that may not see what we see, maybe them or their children to see a better way of life if the doctor lives next to the grocery store worker, or if the lawyer lives next to the garbage man. I have a very good career in the trades, which I think is not pushed enough within our community, because the trades are the building block of any community, because doctors can't work in a hospital if you don't have carpenters, electricians, plumbers, HVAC people to build those things. No different from the lawyer cannot have a courthouse without these same type of people. But if we do what other groups do, which when they send their children to school to get advanced education, they tell them to bring their intellectual properties back to our community. We're the only ones that freely give away our intellectual community, our intellectual property, without a sense of ownership to that. We see it in music. We see it in any and everything that we do. We freely give it away when others take hold of their property, bring it back to their communities, and then uplift their communities with their intellectual property, their finances, and anything else that they have. But we're the only ones that want to escape where we come from. And that's because we were sold a false narrative of what integration is. We did not establish that for ourselves. We did not say what integration meant for us. It was given to us, and we bought that, and then we walked off into this modern-day Babylon to where we're still in captivity mentally and physically. So I think that we need to rework what the value system means to us. And once again, once we send our children to school, don't tell the kids, yes, we want our kids to have better than us. Absolutely. Any
okay, Brother Ahmad, unfortunately, I apologize. We're running out of time, and we have to table parties until next Saturday, because next Saturday, I got so many texts, and now we have to cover some of these on the next week's show. We won't be able to cover them all, but real quickly, like Attorney Banks could give a quick closing to Milton, and then we'll resume this conversation next Saturday, so make sure you tune in, and we have a few more comments. Attorney Banks?
My comment is that I'm looking forward to continuing this discussion and specifically talking about efforts taking place to address nationally the issue of reparations. There is a bill that's been introduced, H.R. 40, which would establish a commission to study and bring back recommendations with respect to reparations. And since 1989, the late, great John Conyers had introduced a reparations bill into the U.S. Congress. And from my perspective, the time for serious consideration of reparations to African Americans is now. The time for truth, accountability, and reparations is now. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining our show today. We're going to continue. We're out of our time now because we put our sponsors' advertisement at the end. And so we're going to resume this topic, these important topics next week. I know we got a bunch of callers. I apologize we couldn't reach everybody today, but we'll resume this discussion next Saturday, and we're going to try to deal with this issue that bugging a lot of people apparently about the unemployment benefits, the critical race theory. And I apologize that we couldn't get to all these topics today, but we're going to tackle them next week. Thank you, and may God bless you, and we'll see you next Saturday.
Thank you, Attorney Lee.
Thank you, everybody. I'll talk to you next Saturday, everybody.